Hello, this is Russell coming to you from the Tate Geological Museum at Casper College, and today I'm going to be talking to you a bit about the skulls of birds. So I'm going to start by showing you one of my favorite sorts of birds. This is the skull of a moa, and moa were gigantic flightless birds. They were the tallest birds that ever lived. And they only are found on the island of New Zealand. And they had a good run, but then they became extinct. And not too long ago, the last moa seemed to have died out only about 400 years ago. They were still alive when Galileo was doing his thing. So it's very frustrating. I feel like I just missed them. The fact that they are extinct has also given rise to a poem composed in New Zealand, which goes like this. No moa, in old Aotearoa, can't get 'em, they've et 'em, they're gone and there ain't no moa. Okay, I accept no responsibility for that. Now, moa have what is called a paleognathous palate. That is to say, the bones of the roof of their mouth is arranged in a particular way. All of the birds in the world today have either a paleognathous palate or a different kind of arrangement, which I'll show you in a moment, called the neognathous palate. And the majority of the birds in the world today that have that paleognathous palate are what we call ratites. Ratites are large, flightless, running birds. The ostrich is an example, the emu, the rhea of South America. Those are all ratites. And all of them have the paleognathous palate, which is characterized by a very large vomer that extends all the way back to contact the pterygoid and palatine bones, all of which are fused together into a nice, big, strong, stiff, solid plate. Now, this arrangement is different than the arrangement that we see in other birds. So this is the skull of a modern California condor, and it has a neognathous palate. And incidentally, unless you live in Tasmania or Australia or one of the continents that was originally part of Gondwana, where ratites are still to be found, probably every bird you've ever seen in your life has the neognathous palate. So here, let's get rid of his mandible there so you can see that. We've got the pterygoid bones very loosely connected to the palatine bones, and the vomer in neognathous birds is either reduced or, as in this case, lost altogether. So the palate is much more lightly constructed and much more flexible than it is in the paleognathous birds, like emus and cassowaries and ostriches. Now, this distinction gave rise to a big mystery early on in the study of fossil birds, and that is that the fossil ratites, and indeed the modern living ratites, have a very wide distribution. They're found in South America, in Africa, in the form of the ostrich, Australia, etc. Lands that nowadays are separated by hundreds or thousands of kilometers of ocean. So how does a flightless bird become so widely distributed on all these different continents? Some people suggested that all of these birds had descended from flying ancestors separately in each of those different places. The problem is that that common feature of the paleognathous palate suggested that they all were related to each other. So could it be that they had originated on the supercontinent of Gondwana, and that as the continents had split and drifted to their current positions, that they'd simply taken their populations of paleognathous birds with them? Well, the problem with that was that the last time Gondwana was all together in one continent was the early Jurassic period, about 200 million years ago, whereas the fossil record of the ratites didn't go back farther than the Paleocene, only about 60 million years ago. So what was the solution? Well, part of the answer comes from right here in Wyoming. This is a cast of a skeleton of a bird called Pseudocrypturus. And it was found in the Green River Formation right here in Wyoming, down in the limestone constituting the bedrock of the southwestern part of the state. And this belongs to a group of birds called the Lithornithids. And Lithornithids have the Paleognathous style of palate. So in this regard, they are primitive. They are more closely related to an ostrich or an emu or a moa than they are to something like a cormorant or a heron or a stork. But unlike ostrich or emu or moa, the Lithornithids had long, strong wing bones. They had long, strong arms, and in a few specimens, feather impressions have been found that show that they had long flight feathers as well. So these guys were able to fly. And sometime during the Paleocene, it seems that they flew from one continent to another, and then they independently lost the power of flight and gave rise to the ratites that we see in South America, Africa, and Australia today.